What's up, guys? Today we will be working on part 3 of the Evo 10's clutch job. If you haven't watched the first two parts, make sure you check them out. I'll leave the links in the description below. Our next step is to prepare the transmission for reinstallation. To do that, we must first tap out this plug. Next, remove this 10mm bolt. Remove this plastic. Lose the tension on these springs. Carefully tap out this shaft. There we go. Remove this plastic. Remove the clutch fork and the old throwout bearing and throw it out. You don't need it anymore. Next, we're gonna clean up all of the parts. I'm using a 1000 grit sandpaper to polish up my shaft. Sounds painful, I know, but it actually works really well. Make sure you use some water to reduce the friction. It's kinda like lube for the sandpaper, so it doesn't scratch the shaft too bad. Also clean the clutch fork. And the transmission input shaft. Next, we're gonna lube everything up. Start at the input shaft, then the throwout bearing, then the clutch fork, and the clutch fork shaft. Insert your throwout bearing, then clutch fork. Make sure you install the clutch fork correctly with the dimple facing away from you. Then you can insert the shaft and don't forget the springs. Notice the orientation of the springs. Make sure you install them correctly. Set tension on the springs. It is very important that you use Loctite on this bolt. Reinstall this plug. And this plastic. Now that we got our flywheel back from the machine shop, it's time to clean it. Also clean your flywheel bolts. The flywheel only fits a certain way, so rotate it until all holes align. It's kind of weird, it takes a while, but just keep rotating until they all align. Install one bolt to secure it on. You must bolt down the flywheel in a star-shaped-like pattern. This is the pattern I used. However, this is the pattern that's in the manual. As you guys know, I don't always follow the manual, but do whatever. Use Loctite on your bolts and thread them all on by hand. This is one of the most crucial steps, so I'm not speeding it up too much so you can all see it properly. If you have any more doubts, comment on the video and I'll get back to you. We can now start tightening them all. Make sure you follow the star-like pattern. I initially used my impact to do this fast before the Loctite starts drying. Then I went over them all again with my torque wrench. owner's manual says to torque them down to 96 foot-pounds. I went ahead and torqued them down to 100 foot-pounds. I am reusing the flywheel and reusing the bolts, so I wanted a little extra insurance just to make sure they were properly tied down. Some people say the bolts stretch. Some people advise you to replace the flywheel bolts. I've reused flywheel bolts before on this Evo, on another Evo, on my Eclipse, and I have no problems at all. So I'm just reusing these ones, and it's been thousands of miles since I changed my clutch, and it's still working just fine. So as long as your bolts are not damaged, you should be fine reusing them. Just make sure you torque them down well. Clean up once you're done. You don't want any oil on your flywheel surface. Next, clean your clutch and pressure plate surface. Apply the supplied lubricant to your clutch plate and the transmission input shaft. Get your clutch and pressure plate together using the clutch alignment tool and set them on the engine. Install one bolt to secure it on. Eyeball the clutch alignment tool right in the center. And you can begin installing the bolts. Make sure to use Loctite on all of them. These bolts are especially tricky because the pressure plate is pushing itself away from the engine. So when you're tightening the bolts, it feels like they're tight, but the pressure plate isn't even flush with the flywheel yet, so you gotta check that. The pressure plate also needs to be tightened down in a star-shaped-like pattern.
Soul in a wonderland without angels. That is how I feel when the mirror shows me a stranger. Yeah. And I know they're just fragments of a world where your absence all I get to see. Take me back to the planet where you and I are still meant to be. 'Cause I'm incomplete when you ain't by my side, when you don't wake up next to me. Yeah, I'm incomplete. I need you here tonight to cover up these empty sheets. 'Cause I'm incomplete. Yeah, I'm incomplete. I'm incomplete. I need you here tonight to cover up these empty sheets. 'Cause I'm incomplete. but it won't be long before I realize it's a picture in my head, in my head.
Once it's flush, you can torque the bolts down to spec. Do not over tighten these bolts because they are so much weaker than the flywheel bolts and they will snap.
To the planet where you and I are still meant to be. 'Cause I'm incomplete when you ain't by my side, when you don't wake up next to me. Yeah, I'm incomplete. I need you here tonight to cover up these empty.
Install your monologue collar if you haven't. Check everything over. Make sure all bolts on the inside are tight, then we can install the transmission.
'Cause I'm incomplete.
Now it's not entirely necessary to remove the coolant line, but it creates more space, so I went ahead and removed it. Plus fresh coolant is always good. Setting up the transmission in place is actually pretty easy on the Evo 10. Just center your engine hoist and attach the chain to the bracket on the transmission and lift it straight up. With the subframe dropped, it should be able to clear past it and align right up to the engine, right in the center. Just be careful not to hit anything on the way up.
Like a broken soul in a wonderland without angels. That is how I feel when the mirror shows me a stranger. Yeah. And I know they're just fragments of a world where your absence all I get to see. Take me back to the planet where you and I are still meant to be. 'Cause I'm incomplete when you ain't by my side, when you don't wake up next to me. Yeah, I'm incomplete. I need you here tonight to cover up these empty sheets. 'Cause I'm incomplete. Yeah, I'm incomplete. I'm incomplete. I need you here tonight to cover up these empty sheets. 'Cause I'm incomplete.
Careful with the monologue collar. Once it's right in the center, push the transmission into the engine.
Yeah, I'm incomplete.
If it's not going in, maybe the splines are not aligned perfectly. Rotate the crank a little to get them to align. Once you do that, try it again, and it should go in. And it's the best feeling in the world.
Oh, yeah. Ah. Yeah. That's the stuff. Fuck yeah.
You need to rotate the transmission a bit for the transmission bolt holes to align.
In my head, and I know they're just fragments of a world where your absence all I get to see.
I put a ratchet strap on the side to rotate it, and it works great.
The planet where you and I are still meant to be.
Install a transmount brackets to hold up the transmission and engine in place.
By my side, when you don't wake up next to me. Yeah, I'm incomplete. I need you here tonight to cover up these empty sheets. 'Cause I'm incomplete.
sure to properly bolt down this transmission bracket, and then you can slide on the next bracket. This is a great place to take a break now that your transmission is being held on by its own mount. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this video right here since it's pretty long already, but make sure you are subscribed for when the final part of this install comes out.